This video is going to show you step by step how to do the Chapter 1 Packet Tracer Skills Integration for the CIS 265 class. With every packet tracer there is going to be two documents. One is a Word document, which is the instructions, and the other is the actual packet tracer file itself. So you need to have packet tracer downloaded and installed on your machine. Step 1 says to design an addressing scheme. This means we're going to do some subnetting. Based on the network requirements shown in the topology, design an appropriate addressing scheme. Start with the largest LAN, and we're always going to start with the largest number of hosts that we see when we're doing variable length subnet mask. I'm going to go through the subnetting quite quickly. If you have other questions, please take a look at the variable length subnet mask video that I sent out. It's the same exact steps for every single scenario, it's just that the numbers are different. So the highest number of hosts that I see is 80. So what I do with my subnetting is I like to draw up my chart right away. And I ask myself, 2 to what power gives me at least 80 hosts? I cannot use 2 to the 6th, that's not enough, so I choose 2 to the 7th. And what that 7 means, that power number, is that I have 7 zeros right hand side of the line. When I'm working with hosts, I'm working right hand side of the line, and I'm working with zeros. When I'm working with locations, I work left hand side of the line in ones. But working with hosts, I need 80, 2 to the 7th. That 7 means 7 zeros right hand side. So I like to draw up my 7 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then I draw my line, and on the left hand side of the line I put my 1 for 8 total bits. I always have to have 8 total bits because there's 8 bits in each octet. Then I figure out what my first range is. And I figure out what my first range is by putting all zeros below this. So I have 8 zeros. Eight zeros is just 0. Then I change the right hand side of the line to ones. So on the right hand side of the line I have 7 ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I ask myself, what is this number? 0 with 7 ones. Well, what I can do is I can put that right underneath my chart. 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. That means I take a 64, a 32, a 16, an 8, a 4, a 2, and a 1, and I add it up, which gives me 127. Something else I can do real quickly is open up the calculator, put it into programmer mode, type in that number in binary, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ones, switch it to decimal, see that I have the number 127. So my first range is 0 through 127. The subnet mask is always right up here at the top. A 1 followed by 7 zeros is a 128. So my subnet mask here is 22255.128. I start with 22255 because if I take a look at the example, I'm starting with a 22255 and I'm only working with the last octet. A 22255.128 is a /25 and slash notation. I have 24 ones that I started with, and here's my 25th one right here. So my network for this particular LAN is 192.168.1.0. 1.0. My next range is going to start with 128. I look at my topology and I ask myself, what is the next highest number of hosts? Next highest number of hosts that I see is 40. So I ask myself, 2 to what power is going to give me at least 40 hosts? And in this case, it's 2 to the 6th. So for 40 hosts, I have 2 to the 6th. So what that 6 means is 6 zeros right hand side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I draw my line. 2, 1, 7, 8 total bits. I said 128 is the number where I left off and what my next range has to start off with. So I draw out below this what 128 looks like in binary. 128 looks like this in binary, a 1 with all zeros after it. So that number is my 128. Through, make my right hand side all ones. To get my broadcast. And now I figure out what this number is here. A 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So I add up a 128 and a 32 and everything else that has a 1 below it. And that number is going to be 191. Again, another way I could do that is to pull up my calculator, put it into programmer mode, type that number in binary. 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ones. Switch it to decimal, that number is 191. The subnet mask for this, right up here at the top, this number here is a 128 and a 64, which is 192. So my subnet mask is a 222.192. That in slash notation is a slash 26. I started with 24 ones. Here's my 25th and my 26th one. My next range has to start with a 192 because that's where I left off. Now I ask myself, what is my next highest number of hosts? Take a look at your topology, and 20 is the next highest number of hosts. So I ask myself, 2 to what power will give me 20 hosts? And that is 2 to the 5th. So for 20, I need 2 to the 5th power. Again, what that 5 means is I have 5 zeros right hand side. So let's draw those out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Draw my line. 6, 7, 8. 8 total bits, always 8 total bits. I said 192 is where I left off. So I draw out what 192 looks like, and a 192 is the 128 and the 64 with all zeros. So that number is the 192. Through, make my right hand side ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ones on the right hand side. Now I ask myself, what is this number? Again, one way I can do this is by opening up the calculator, and in binary mode, I type it in 110 with 5 more ones. Switch it to decimal, and that number is 223. Now the subnet mask for this range, again, always right up here at the top, 22255. Dot, what is this number? Well, it's the 128, the 64, and the 32, which is 224. And in slash notation, that's a slash 27. My next range has to start with 224 because that's where I left off. And I ask myself, what's the next highest number of hosts? And I can see that I actually have 2 with 2 hosts. So I'm going to subnet this out 2 times for 2 hosts. So now I ask myself, 2 to what power will give me at least 2 hosts? And I have to choose 2 to the second here. I choose 2 to the first. That only gives me 2. So I would have a range with 2 to the first like this. 0 through 1, which only gives me a network ID and a broadcast and no room for any hosts in between. 2 to the second is the lowest power number I can get. So for 2, I use 2 to the second. So again, what that 2 tells me is I have 2 zeros right hand side. 1, 2. Draw my line. Finish the rest off with ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I have 8 total bits. 224 is where I left off, so I'm going to draw out what a 224 looks like. And a 224 is 3 ones and the rest zeros. That number is my 224. Through, change my right hand side to 1, to ones. And now I ask myself, what's this number? Well, this was 224 plus a 2 plus a 1, which is 227. The subnet mask for this, again right up here at the top, 22255.252, or the same as a /30. My next range must start with 228. I have one more for 2 hosts, so I use 2 to the second again. Draw out what that 2 tells me I have 2 zeros right hand side. 1, 2. Fill the left hand side in with ones. I'll need 6 ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. $228 is where I left off, so I draw out what 228 is. That's a 128, a 64, a 32, and a 4. So that number is my 228. Through, make my right hand side ones. That's 231. Same subnet mask as I had in the last one. 22255.252. This number here is 252. That's the same as a /30. Alright, back to the instructions. Step 2 is to document the addressing scheme. So up in our chart above, it says for the LANs, assign the first IP address to the router interface, assign the last IP address to the PC. So if I take a look up here at my table, I'm going to start with B1. And I'm going to start with B1's fast Ethernet 00. And it says to use the first usable in the range. Here's my range that I decided for B1's LAN with the 80 hosts. So the first usable is .1. The .0 is the network ID. The .127 is the broadcast. So the first usable I can use would be 191, would be 192, 168, 1.1. The subnet mask is what I calculated in the example. Triple 255.128. The last usable I'm going to assign to the PC. 127 was the broadcast, so 126 is going to be the last usable. So 192, 168, 1.126 is the last usable. Subnet mask, that same range. The default gateway, PC1's default gateway is B1. So whatever address I assign to B1, right here, that is going to be my default gateway. I'm going to continue with the LANs. HQ was our second range we figured out. So the first usable in the second range is HQ's fast Ethernet 00. So if I take a look at my subnetting, here is my second range I figured out. So the first usable is going to be 129. So in my chart, 192, 168, 1.129. Subnet mask I figured out was 22255.192. Last usable in that one is going to go to PC2. And the last usable is going to be 190. I cannot use 191, that is the broadcast, so 190. 192, 168, 1.190. Subnet mask, 22255.192. The default gateway for PC2 is HQ's fast Ethernet 00. My last LAN that I have is B2, and that was for the 20 hosts. So if I take a look at my subnetting, for the 20 hosts, I have 192 through 223. So for the first usable, it's going to be .193. So for B2's fast Ethernet, I have 192.168.1.193. Subnet mask 22255. Dot. Take a look at my chart again. 224. Last usable is going to go to PC3, 192.168.1.222. Subnet mask 22255.224. Default gateway is B2's address. Alright, we still have our serial links. Let's take a look at the instructions here. It says for the WAN links, assign the first IP address to HQ. We want to assign the first available address space WAN link between B1 and HQ. So between B1 and HQ, that's going to get my first one that I assigned, or that I set up for the two hosts. So here's one for two hosts. I'm going to give that one between B1 and HQ. So the first usable, 225, I'm going to give that to HQ. It says for the WAN links, assign the first address to HQ. So 192.168.1.225. Subnet mask 22255.252. The second in that range is going to connect to B1. So 192.168.1.226. Same subnet mask. So again, first usable 225 given to HQ, second usable 226 given to B1. Now between HQ and B2, first usable HQ is going to be 229. Second usable is going to be B2, 230. So 192.168.1.229. Subnet mask 22255.252. Second usable 192.168.1.230. Subnet mask 22255.252. Let's double check that here. First usable 229, second usable 230. That checks out. So there is our IP addressing chart. Alright, we have our IP addressing done and documented. We can continue on to the next steps. Task 2. Select equipment and cable devices. Select the necessary equipment and add it to the working space inside of Packet Tracer. Use the labels as guides. Step 2 to go along with that is to finish out the cabling. So that's what I'm going to do now. Open up my Packet Tracer file, and I need to grab the rest of the devices and finish this out. Here are the rest of my devices. This is S1. So I'm going to grab S1 and put it in its place. I'm going to grab S2 and put it in its place. S3 and put it in its place. And then PC2, which is the last one, and put it in its place. Now I need to make all of my connections. In between a PC and a switch, those are unlike devices, so that is a straight through cable. So I'm going to pick my straight through cable here, and I'm going to click one end on the fast Ethernet of the PC. The other end on fast Ethernet 0.1 of the switch. Then from a switch to a router, these are unlike devices as well, so I choose my copper straight through again. One end on the switch, the other end on B1's, notice fast Ethernet 0.0. I want to go from B1 to B2. Notice that B1's serial 00 says it's the DCE. So I go over and I choose the serial DCE cable. And between two routers is always going to be a serial for the most part. Serial 000 up to HQ's 000. In between a router and a switch, unlike devices, copper straight through. This end on the fast Ethernet 00, this end onto the switch, and from the PC to the switch as well. From HQ down to B2, notice that it's the serial 001 is the DCE. Go grab my DCE cable, serial 001, other end over to serial 001 on this side. Router to a switch, unlike device, straight through cable. Types of cables goes back to our Cisco 1 class. Like devices is crossovers, unlike devices is our straight throughs. Switch to PC. What you'll notice with packet tracers, as you start completing tasks, your completion percentage goes up. And if you want, you can hit check results, and the check results will put a check box next to everything that you need to do. Looks like I have maybe a couple mistakes here. If I take a look, B1's connection to the switch 1 is supposed to connect to fast Ethernet 01. Let's take a look at that again here. So B1, its connection to serial 01 is supposed to connect right here to fast Ethernet 01, and I have it plugged into fast Ethernet 02. That is why I did not get that checkbox. So what I need to do is I need to make that appropriate change. So B1's fast Ethernet 00, according to the directions, I want that to be on the switch port of 01. Let's see if I have the same thing for my other routers. That one looks okay. So does that one. So let me check my results again. I'm up to 24%. I have checkboxes for my connections, it looks like. Okay, let's go and take a look at the instructions. Task 3, configure the routers. Using your documentation, configure the routers with basic configurations including addressing. Use Cisco as the line passwords and class as the secret passwords. Use 6400 as the clock rate. A lot of these commands go back to our semester 1 Cisco class and the last chapter. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to do all my basic configurations for my router, and I'm going to start with B1 over here. One of the first things I'm going to do is get into enable mode, and I'm going to get into config T. And config T is where we make all of our configuration changes to the router. And everything we do in Packet Tracer is always going to be through the command line and not through the config tab. Usually it's locked and you'll get this message. So clicking back on B1 on the CLI tab, I'm going to configure the host name. So do the host name, which is B1. And if you're looking for a reference for these commands, let me know and I can send you a sheet. Also pulling up the Cisco One curriculum is a great way to figure out these commands. I'm going to configure my interfaces with IP addresses, and to get into your interfaces you type in int, or you can type in interface. Either will work. I like to shorten it by just typing int, but interface fast Ethernet 00. Take a look at your chart, and the chart for fast Ethernet 00, the IP address is 192.168.1.1 with the 22255.128. So in order to configure that, I type in to my router IP address 192.168.1.1 subnet mask 22255.128. And to turn on your interfaces, you do the no shutdown command. I also have an interface of serial 0/0/0. The IP address of that is 192.168.1.B1 serial 0/0/0 1.226 subnet mask 22255.252. So I type that into the router. If I take a look at my topology, I also notice that this is the DCE device. If you remember, our DCE devices need the clock rate command, and it says to use the clock rate of 64,000. In almost all packet tracers, we're going to use that clock rate of 64,000, and that applies only to the DCE serial interfaces. Turn this one on by doing the no shutdown command as well. A few other things I need to configure on this router are the passwords. We have a few different passwords. We have our line console 0 password. We want that when we attempt to log in. We have our line VTY04 password. This is for our telnet connections or our virtual terminal connections. We need that when we attempt to log in through telnet. And we also have a secret password of class. I like to save the configuration by doing a copy run start, and that saves that configuration. From time to time I like to just go check out that my completion percentage is going up. I'll take a look at B1. I configured that line console 0. I've configured the login command and I configured the password. I did the host name. I did the fast Ethernet IP address. I have all my connection types. I turned on the port. I have the correct subnet mask to go along with the IP address. I did the clock rate on the serial. I did the IP address on the serial. I have my link right for that serial connection. It's turned on. I have my line VTY password. So B1 checks out. Notice I still have everything to do for B2 and for HQ. So I'm going to go do that right now. I'll do HQ next. HQ has 3 interfaces to configure: serial 000, serial 001, and fast Ethernet 00. I'm going to go into HQ and to enable mode first. Enable mode is our privilege mode. Allows us to do show commands like show run to get an idea of what commands I've typed in. Notice no IP addresses or anything yet. Nothing here for our line console 0 for password or for the line VTY. No host name or anything in there. I can also do commands like show IP route to view the routing table. No routes in here yet. I can do commands like the copy run start to save the configuration. I could also do the erase start to delete the configuration and start from scratch. But what I need to do are my host names first, and get into config T to do any configurations that are going to change the router. So I have hostname HQ. I'm going to do my passwords right away. So I have my line console 0. That password is Cisco, it told me in the directions. I need that password when I attempt to log in. I also have my line VTY 0 through 4, my telnet. That password is also Cisco. I need that password when I log in as well. And then I have my secret password to get into enable mode, and that is class. So if I exit all the way out of here, this very first password it's asking me for is my line console 0. If you notice here, I'm trying to connect through the console 0. So it's asking me for that password. And when you type the password, nothing's going to show up on the screen. So there's Cisco as my password. I type enable to get into privileged mode. It's asking me for my secret password now, which was class. And I can get back into config T mode. I need to configure my interfaces. So interface fast Ethernet 00. My IP address for my fast Ethernet of HQ. 192.168.1.129. Subnet mask 22255.192. Turn it on with the no shutdown. Notice with Cisco commands you can basically shorten almost everything. Instead of typing address, I can just type in add. Instead of typing interface, I can type in int. Instead of typing fast Ethernet, I can just type in FA. Going to configure the serials now. I have interface serial 0/0/0, IP address of 192.168.1.225, subnet mask of 22255.252. Turn that on. I have my interface of serial 0/0/1, an IP address of 192.168.1. If you ever get interrupted like this, you can just continue typing. 229. Subnet mask 22255.252. There's the command again that I just typed in. This one does need the clock rate. If I look at my topology, serial 001 is the DCE. So I do put the clock rate of 64,000. Turn it on with the no shutdown. And I'm going to do a copy run start to save. I'm going to take a look at my completion. I should have all checks next to HQ. Looks like HQ is good to go. I have my B2 to configure. Do B2 real quick here. Configure the host name, passwords, my secret to get into enable mode, configure my interfaces, one 192.168.1.193 with the 22255.224. turn on with the no shut. I also have my interface serial 0/0/1. And the IP address for this one, 192.168.1.230.255.252. Okay, if I take a look, I'm at 84%. Check my results here. B1 is good, B2 is good, HQ is good. Go back to my instruction sheet. So I applied the basic configuration to all the routers, just did that. Now I can configure the PCs. Configure the PCs with the IP addresses from my chart. So PC1 is going to be 192.168.1.126. Click on the PC. Go to the desktop tab. 192.168.1.126. Subnet mask. 222.55.128. Default gateway. .1. And I can close that. And if I check my results, I can see that PC1 is configured correctly. And I would go configure PC2 and PC3 just as it says in my chart. And I would get my 100% completion, and the 57 required items would be checked out. I won't go through the time to configure those last two PCs, but hopefully after watching this video you get an idea of how the packet tracer works. We always have to do some subnetting first, fill out your chart. Once you have your chart, you can now come into your routers and make the configurations. You can get the IP addresses from that chart. Do your basic configurations as far as host names, configuring the interfaces, configuring the passwords. Again, if you're looking for some references for those commands, let me know and I can send you out a reference sheet, or also take a look at the curriculum from last semester. If you have any questions as far as how to variable link subnet mask, let me know and I can shoot you that video link if you don't see it posted in the class, or you can contact me for some one-on-one help. If you have any other questions regarding Packet Tracer, please let me know. This is vital for you to know how to use. This is our main tool in order to configure the routers and switches, especially for the online classes, as we don't have actual routers and switches for you guys to use. Thanks for watching.